All right, business. This is a show. I was tempted to make it politics. In fact, I recorded about a minute of footage in which I was using it as politics, but it occurred to me that my politics things, my episodes, aside from the fact that I've been pumping them out really quickly, which is a pretty good distinction, a pretty good way to tell me that it's too general a topic and it should be split up. But it's also the fact that those topics tend to generally go over things like sexism, racism, fundamental problems within society, and if I can help it, not directly impactful things that people are discussing right now. That'll be news. But I figured that I should split off my financial stuff, the stuff that's more based on monetary policy, if I'm using that word right. So I don't know what I'm going to call this right now. I'm thinking either business or economics, but whatever this series ends up being called. Today's topic, in case you couldn't tell by the my titles get vague. At one point I couldn't figure out what I was talking about, or I could, but it ended off at the end. But I went over a whole bunch of stuff like dire predictions of the future, and I couldn't. It took me like a half hour to figure out how I was going to title that sucker, and there's no way you could tell by the title. So these titles might be vague, but what I'm going over today is small business versus big business. I am not actively, but I'm passively against big business. I think that in the situation where you can take it from the man, if you can take something from a big business, go ahead. That's honestly my policy on these things. Not because I'm against business, but I think that it's physically impossible to be pro big business and also pro small business. One of the main problems with big business is that, all right, I guess I'll explain it in terms that people would understand. I'm using North American stores, so you might not recognize these if you're like an Aussie or an Englishman or something who's off. I'm speaking English, so I'm assuming here, but either way, or I suppose New Zealand speaks English too, so if you're a Kiwi. But anyways, I don't live anywhere near those areas. I'm really hoping that Aussie and Kiwi aren't like racist terms over there. Anyways, so because there are things like Walmart, Target, Kroger, big stores like that, the result is that you basically just don't get local supermarkets and things like that. That's not to say that you don't. Supermarkets are actually a bad example, I realized as I was writing them down. But they're mainly a bad example because you still do actually get local supermarkets, but that's because there's a big push for things like organic and locally grown, which just, Walmart, Target, Kroger, whatever, can't do that because they basically have to be able to, for stores like that to work properly, they basically have to have one store look like any other store. It's minor differences, but effectively the same format, effectively the same looking employees, effectively the same policies. So you could walk into a Kroger where I am, which of course I'm not going to tell you, but you could walk into a Kroger where I am and then walk 1,000 miles or drive most likely and walk into another Kroger, and the idea that Kroger has to push through to be such a big across the nation style country or nations is that walking into that other one, theoretically I shouldn't be able to tell the difference. Of course I would probably, just because I've been to the ones at home more often, so I'd tell the minor differences. But if I were to walk 100 miles, or again drive, then go into a Kroger, then go another 100 miles and go into another Kroger, the idea is that I wouldn't be able to tell much differences between the two. The problem with doing that is that locally grown stuff just can't really work. Once in a while they get local stuff, but only the best packaged. Like there's I don't want to say what because it'll really give away where I am, but there's a local, it's a really I'm pretty sure it's a nationally popular brand, but it's really popular here. anyways, and it's a snack. Anyways, this snack company, and that company, they get to throw on locally made. But it's the more well-to-do kind of stuff that they were already pre-packaging and mass-producing their stuff, so that they can make the locally produced stuff. But you're not going to get the we went to a local farmer or a union of farmers, and this is where we get our tomatoes from. That's how you're going to get local supermarkets. But you think of other examples of stores, and what I thought of was office supply stores. Let's, as a little include the audience thing here, let's think of however many the audience, you guys, think of however many office supply stores we can. I'll even start you guys off with the list. Okay, Office Max, Office Depot. Now it's your turn. I feel like I should include Jeopardy music. All right, so you might have come up with one or two, honestly, but I'm assuming that a good number of you just couldn't think of anything. Because once you get past Office Max and Office Depot, at least where I am, it's basically nothing. There might be other big brands in other parts of North America, or, this is one example where there's probably an Office Max and Office Depot example over for the Aussies and Kiwis. Again, I really hope that's not a racist thing. I suppose it wouldn't be a race thing as much as a national thing, like maybe the Australians called the New Zealanders Kiwis as a joke, and now it's mean to call someone from New Zealand a Kiwi. Anyways, that's not the issue here. The thing is, there should be local office supply stores. In an ideal capitalist country, there is just a ton of local businesses. They're all competing. Maybe the pens at one store A are cheapest, but on the other hand, that's because they have a good deal with the pen manufacturer, and everything else in their store is mediocre priced at best. In an ideal capitalist economy, that's how it works. It doesn't work that there's one or two or 10 or 100 even major companies which pretty much determine how things are. The idea is that there's 1,000. There might be big brands which tie these companies together. So we'll call it the Pilot pens. Pilot pens might have a deal with, we'll call it, say 50,000 of these stores, and then the other 150,000 which they don't have a deal with suffer because they don't get Pilot pens, and Pilot pens are cheap and mass produced. But that's the closest thing to a nationalized store that we should get in an ideal capitalist economy. The problem is we're not getting that. We're getting effectively socialist systems. Of course, they're more based on money, so we still call it capitalism, but it doesn't seem like capitalism, at least not to me, in that they're these super big companies which basically determine how the industry functions. And the problem is they only determine it on how can they make more money. At least a socialist country would determine it on how can we make our people happier. Or at least how can we stop them from revolting, but that's still how can we make our people happier. It's just a little more conniving version of that. But the problem is these big businesses, in having such cheap prices, in nationalizing how much things cost, they shut down local stores. They physically can't function. Even the really specific stuff is starting to go national, like glass making and stuff like that, and like the stuff where it requires a highly skilled craftsman or a tradesman or something like that are going into nationalized companies, not just the generalized stores, although they were certainly some of the first. My problem with this is that the thing is, ideally, we're a country basically run by its people, and run by an extension of run by its people is economically run by its people, which would directly mean small businesses rather than large, or at least medium businesses, like one state or territory kind of big would be about the limit. It's hard to say where a limit would have to be. And of course, what are you gonna do? You're gonna legalize big business, but can't do that. But I don't. Anyway, it's a point I wanted to make across. I'm not gonna do the thing with politics episodes where I try to give a solution, because my solutions here would be even worse than politics. I'm not an economics person. Well, I enjoy thinking about certain economics topics, but I'm not. My primary thought processes aren't generally over things like economics. But I thought I'd bring up this issue. The problem with having large nationalized or universalized, I suppose you could say, at least globalized businesses is, although I know as soon as we start colonizing Mars or the moon or whatever, there's going to be a Walmart. But the problem with having our businesses like this is that it effectively forces a pyramid structure for everything. You're going to have your CEOs, your main ultra rich, who are basically going to own the local economy. And personally, I just don't think that fits into a country by and for the people, which of course most countries at least pretend to be nowadays. Well, all right, enjoy what's almost certainly going to be the generalized outro, because I am like 20 outros behind, and it might just be the generalized outro for all of the videos for the rest of time at this point. So yeah, enjoy that.